I've noticed that some crucially important issues are getting lost over the course of the last few months. And I want to circle back to one of them, and that is the effort to send Donald Trump to prison for the rest of his life. And this is an extraordinarily troubling event that's taking place in the United States, and it's only getting worse by the day, and it's not getting the proper attention that it deserves. Let's look at January 6th in that case in Washington, D.C. You have two Enron obstruction statutes or sections that are being used. You have a post-Civil War KKK statute that's being used. You have a fourth statute that involves federal contractors who misapply funds. None of these charges have anything to do with Donald Trump or January 6th. So what the prosecutor in this case, Jack Smith, is attempting to do, and this is the history of Jack Smith, and that's why he was appointed, is to bootstrap through these statutes a case against Donald Trump that is, in fact, seditious conspiracy and insurrection without the elements and without the proof. And prosecutors are not supposed to conduct themselves this way. Trump has not been charged with any violence, with any violent act. He's not been charged with seditious conspiracy. He's not been charged with insurrection. He's not been charged with or for the Capitol violence that took place by Smith. But Smith is exploiting it in his filings, in his motions, in the arguments he tells the court, now the defense he's going to make. There is no evidence whatsoever that Donald Trump orchestrated any of this. Donald Trump went into this limping because a prior Obama judge ruled, a motions judge, that his attorney-client privilege with his lead lawyer in the case in Washington, D.C. Was waived under the crime-fraud exception. That was a secret proceeding. We still don't know what happened, but his lead lawyer was forced to testify in front of the grand jury. His notes were used in front of the grand jury. I just want to ask the American people, is that due process? Much of this is about the First Amendment, the right of a candidate, a former president, a president, to speak his mind about political actions, about elections, and so forth. Much of this is about opinions and free speech. And so I'm watching this. The judge in the Trump election interference case, writes NBC, won't strike January 6 references from the indictment. All the violence, all the activity that's pouring into these papers that are being filed by the government for the purpose, obviously, of influencing the jury without charging him with such things. Judge denies Trump's fishing expedition, she calls, to subpoena January 6 committee records, because it's clear that many of those materials were turned over to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, and they've been fished through by them. And there's missing documents, and there's missing testimony. Politico, Trump is not immune from election subversion prosecution, judge says. You have important constitutional issues. If things the president says and does while he's president, when he leaves the presidency, doesn't the protection of the presidency carry over? Are we now going to have a nation where ex-presidents are going to be charged with things they say, legitimate and illegitimate, or things they've done after the fact? So the whole idea of that immunity is waived? January 6th attack, ABC News, was exactly what Trump intended, special counsel claims in his report. In other words, he intended violence. He intended all these things to happen. And yet he's not charged with any of this.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to levintv.com and subscribe now.